Hey everybody, welcome to WTF Hammer Underworlds. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down and sharing all of my Season 1 play out of the box photoshopped cards and extra content that I've produced just to facilitate this sort of gameplay. I'll be linking the intro video that I made in the description if you guys want a bit more context. But this slide is basically just going to give you the gist of things that you should know. First being the whole play out of the box errata and new faction specific cards that I made. And the whole idea here is that, seeing as this is a deck building game, each warband is really meant to be modified with existing universal cards in order for you to make your own custom deck and then play that competitively. When I had initially bought this game, I wasn't completely aware of that format, seeing as in my experiences with Games Workshop games, or maybe not Games Workshop games, but Warhammer games, things like Forbidden Stars and Chaos in the Old World. I was used to these sort of faction-based types of board games where you choose a faction and they had a specific way of playing them, and then you just try to master them and compete them against other factions, but everything was basically balanced. But obviously Warhammer Underworlds doesn't work like that. It's really about the deck building, about exploiting combos to make the ultimate deck with the ultimate warband in a given meta. But it also makes it pretty time consuming in order to actually play this game, makes it pretty uninviting for new players who just hop in, seeing as there's a big learning curve, not just in how to play the game itself, but also in the whole deck building. So the whole purpose of the work that I've been doing is to make it so that every warband can be play out of the box, as in you don't mix universal cards with them, and that they'd all relatively be competitive and thematic. And since there's so many warbands, it would lead to a huge variety of different gameplay options. And in all of my errata and new faction specific card suggestions, all warbands would obviously have 12 universal cards because that's the standard amount that's needed for a functional deck. But I modified cards to make sure that each warband had 6 Surge and then 6, either end phase or third end phase cards, but there's only ever one max third end phase card, with the effort of making all the warbands balanced in terms of the potential that they have in terms of scoring glory based on, which of their objective cards are very reliable, unreliable, or not reliable at all kind of thing. But I tried my best to make them balanced. Obviously, it's not perfect. Furthermore, in terms of their power cards, I made sure that every warband had 22 power cards, so 11 gambit cards, 11 upgrade cards, and I just went through all gambits and upgrades to make sure that every single card was at least useful. So obviously in the initial iteration, many power cards were just not useful at all and would just be put to the side. I made it so that every power card is at least useful, at least functional, and also thematic for the given warband. And obviously, since this is a play out of the box style of home rules that I'm putting together, there's no universal cards, there's no deck building, so it makes everything really easy. So you can basically just grab a warband and just play them straight out of the box. They would have a very routine way of getting played. And obviously there's lots of variety that can take place anyway, depending on board layout, depending on which warband you're competing against, depending on which cards you draw. So, still creates a huge amount of variety, but it would be compartmentalized within a specific warband. So you wouldn't end up in a situation where different warbands have the same cards, right? So more variety in that case, which I just think is an improvement. Next thing you should know about the cards that I put together is that they're really optimized for 4-player games. In fact, when I was balancing universal cards, I really did so with the attitude of 4 players playing at the same time. I haven't done enough play testing to really know for sure if in 1v1s warbands will be very balanced and competitive in that sense. There'd be way too many possible combinations of warbands for me to put together and test that way, so I didn't do it. So yeah, everything's really balanced for 4 players, because in the chaos of a 4-player game, minor issues in balancing become a little bit less evident. And I have played numerous 4-player games with all of these warbands, and I do find that each game really feels balanced. It feels that every warband has an equal chance of winning at any given time. But like I said, in a 4-player game, in a 1v1, those balancing nuances might be more evident. And I would just say if you're going to play a 1v1 game, just play the normal Shadespire rules. And next rule is just a suggestion. So the whole mulligan rule. So obviously in normal Warhammer Underworlds, the mulligan rules are pretty harsh. You either fully discard your objective hand, fully discard your power card hand, or fully discard both. I'd recommend, since this is meant to be more inviting to new players, and since games that are 4 players tend to last longer, that you just apply a more modest mulligan rule where people can just specifically discard the cards they don't want. So if they draw 3 objective cards and there's one that they don't like, well, they can just discard that one without discarding all 3, and same thing with power cards. So that's just my suggestion. Obviously, you don't have to apply this. This is just my suggestion to make the game more fun and feel more balanced, that everybody starts off on the same foot. And another interesting thing is that many special game modes can be incorporated in this play out of the box style, such as hazard cards. So introducing hazard cards is lots of fun, especially in a 4-player game. The added chaos makes some really fun and interesting interactions. You can apply the Grand Avatar card. So the Grand Avatar rules basically have you custom build a warband. In my iteration, you would just obviously play out of the box with a specific warband, but you can make it so that the 4 players each choose a different Grand Alliance and then just take the Grand Avatar card, and then you could play Grand Avatar rules if you want, and it'd be very easy. You could also apply Apex Predator rules as a special game mode if you like to, which I find interesting because it sort of allows warbands that are losing in a game to always have that chance to come back. So you can be in a situation where one warband got completely shafted, have maybe 2 glory when the first place has 20 glory or something like that. Because of Apex Predator rules, they can actually still come back, so it does allow for that, which is nice. And you could even apply these rules to have 4 warbands fight against the Glass Mad Gargan in cooperative play. You could even do a solo play against the Fulmoroid Crusher in a Crushing Terror. So super versatile, and lots of time is saved in deck building. So you can just pull out this game, have people choose their warbands, and play a variety of different modes in a balanced and fun interactive way. And I just say, is this better than the original? That's debatable, but I personally find it is a lot more fun than the original, in which certain universal cards just get played by everybody, and then there's a certain predictability that arises, where I actually find this game is a lot less predictable just because of the huge variety of different warbands and game modes that can be put into place. So that does it for my intro. I'll show you guys all the Season 1 cards that I have remade and will be making available through a link in the description, as well as an extra resource I have in order to make everything a lot smoother for new players. So starting with the Steel Hearts Champions, all the cards that I had put into that document, that errata and new faction specific cards document, are here and rebuilt through Photoshop so that they're very functional. I put a little house symbol on each of them, and so that'd be easy to differentiate them from your original cards. What you could do is just mix these with your original faction specific cards, and if ever you want to do play out of the box style, you can just grab all the house cards while omitting to put in the cards with the same names that don't have the house symbol, and then it would be very easy to just compile your 12 objective cards, 22 power card decks. So I'm not going to go over every single one of these cards specifically because it would take too much time, but I have organized it so that you can just print it out smoothly front to back. Ideally on cardstock, then you could laminate them with 5mm laminate paper, which I find is the best. You can obviously do 3mm as well, but I just find it makes them a little bit too floppy. But you basically have these cards opposite their backs. Then you go on to more Steel Hearts Champions cards opposite their backs, going on to Garruk's Reavers opposite their backs, more Garruk's Reavers, and so on. So Spalko Guard, Iron Skulls Boys, Chosen Axes. There's a lot of them. Spike Claw Swarm, Far Striders, and Magor's Fiends. And I've also prepared these little tactical cards that you can use, which, really have 2 purposes. You can kind of separate them by Grand Alliance. You can put all the chaos cards together, so like Garruk's Reavers in the same area as Wurmspat, as the Dread Pageant, etc. And then people can kind of decide which Grand Alliance they want, and they could randomly choose one of these cards to decide which faction they end up playing, or they can just choose from them however they want to do it. It makes it really easy to do Grand Avatar style if you choose to do it that way. But more importantly, you basically have 2 sides to these cards. You have a front which has all the lore, so a specific lore from the Warhammer Underworlds, and I also put a little quip to kind of apply their lore to their Inspire mechanic, which in some cases was specifically released from Games Workshop, and in other cases was just me applying some creative thinking. But yeah, this side basically covers the lore, and you can see a similar sort of format for Steel Hearts Champions here. But the back side of each of these cards have all the tactics, and I broke the tactics into 2 sections: board and unit placement, and then general strategy. So for me, this made the most sense because when people come to play the game, the first thing that comes up is where to place your board, what board to choose, how to place your units. And if people don't understand what their warband is capable of, it just ends up becoming a pile of randomness, which can actually have huge impact on the result of the game. So I basically made a strategy out of this. I had board and unit placement. They first can decide what their board choice and placement is, so they have a sense as to what boards they should choose and how they should be placing their boards, then how they should be placing tokens on those boards, specifically the objective tokens and the lethal hexes, and then how they should be placing their units on that board that they chose. This is obviously in relation to whatever other boards the other players they're going to be competing against will be using. And there's the general strategy for when the game actually begins, which can be broken into multiple parts. It obviously depends on the warband. It can be broken into the aggressive strategy, the positional strategy, the control, the defense, or the magic strategy. So clearly, Garrux Reavers don't have much of a defense or magic strategy. It's all aggression, position, and control. Then I just put suggestions as to how they should generally make decisions so that when they draw any particular card, they'll actually be in a position where they could benefit from it in case they don't know very well what their decks are. I have a little quip on the right side to kind of give a summary as to what style of gameplay this warband tends to apply. So in the case of Garrux Reavers, it says that Garrux Reavers are comprised of lightly armored, blood god worshipping melee cannibals. They thrive when preventing enemies from holding objective tokens, from killing and or dying trying. And I have a little grid on the bottom right to show the weight of their objective cards in terms of accomplishing any particular type of strategy, whether it's aggression, position, or control. So you can see that Garrux Reavers, their deck is highly aggressive, somewhat positional, and a little bit control, and then there's no magic, no defense at all. So people can look at that and kind of decide if they want to take a warband based on the type of tactics that are beneficial in order for that warband to win. And I will be including a PDF of these tactical cards in the description as well, where I basically just fit 2 slides per page. So you can kind of get a sense as to how large these things are. They're not too big. They're about half a page size each. And I did this for every warband for season 1 and the other warbands, which are still in the progress of being worked out. But there's Steelheart's Champions back, and then there's Sepulchral Guard front, Iron Skull's Boy front, Sepulchral Guard back, Iron Skull's Boys back, Chosen Axes front, which is all the lore, Spike Claw's Swarm front, which is all the lore, Chosen Axes back, Spike Claw's Swarm back, which is all the tactic stuff, and it just kind of continues this way. Farstriders, and then Magor's Fiends, and that covers it for all of season 1, all of which will be included in the description. So that basically does it for my video. Obviously, it took me a substantial amount of work not only to balance these things out, but specifically to Photoshop build all these cards. The strategy cards were also fairly time consuming to make. But I'm sharing it with you guys. I hope you enjoy. Generally speaking, now when I play this game, I have been playing it play out of the box style because so it's easy just to quickly get a game in by inviting a couple friends over or just playing with my family because there's no prep. Games are fun. A lot of times people will tend to zoom in on a couple warbands and then be competitive with them. And it's nice that every warband can be competitive and that we're not forced to default on a given meta with regard to choosing which warbands we should play and not play. So that whole variety is nice. Overall, I find this makes the game better. I personally find this better than the original, but it's also very different from the original. Clearly, there's no deck building, which is a huge motivator for some people, especially in this type of a game. But the whole idea of just being able to grab a faction that you find interesting and then play them and be competitive and be able to play them in a whole variety of different game modes is very cool, doesn't require so much work and so much prep, and is definitely a lot of fun to do. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, please comment below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. And as soon as I finish putting together all of the Photoshop cards for Season 2 and Season 3, I will be making a video and making those available to you all as well. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.